Start here, and I'm going to share my screen here. Okay. All righty. Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome, Scott. Welcome. This is the Sophisticated Eats by M. Lachey. Today's class on December 3rd, we're doing basic baking skills for the holidays. And this is one of my favorite out of all the months of the year that I do these classes, one of my favorite because I love the holidays. And during this class, I get to know my students and know what they like to celebrate and what traditions they have and how to put it together in a recipe. So I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing today. So I love to just basically, so you'll know what we are going to be, our objectives. We have 4 today. So we're going to talk about the art of baking, basic baking skills, and some of these skills you already are familiar with, because if you're a baker, you cook at home, some of the things that you already are privy to. Easy tips and tricks. Also money saving techniques and strategies. I'll talk about some ingredient swapping and changing out. And then the holiday recipe hacks, like we'll talk about a homemade crust versus a pre-made crust, the pluses and the minuses on that. And we'll also talk about different types of ways that you can swap some ingredients out and still make a great recipe. So those are our 4 things that we're going to cover the next 2 hours, hour and a half today. And if you have any questions, let me know. Yes.
Are we going to actually make the spice cake and the chestnut pie today?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, good. Because yes. I have all the ingredients here.
Yes, so this is what we take, and I say 2 hours, but we may go a little bit over because I want to make sure that before we conclude that you're comfortable and that you are well versed in where you're going and how you want to put the recipe together. So I do encourage all my participants to participate and to get the best bang for their buck, and also to get the best experience, because this is my time to share with you to make sure you're ready for the holiday season and you can make these recipes without a blink of an eye. Okay.
So tomorrow's my mother's birthday. I promised her a slice of each when I go to meet her.
Absolutely, yes.
And let me grab a chair so I can sit down during the lessons part.
Okay, absolutely.
Back in a second.
Yes, no problem.
I ain't no spring chicken myself.
Okay, listen, you do, if you need to sit, because I always tell my home cooks as well, you're at home. So whatever your comfort zone is in your kitchen, if it's sitting down making a recipe, please feel free to, because this is about you being comfortable and being excited and participating. So absolutely.
I love to cook. I love to bake.
I do too. That's my happy place. Baking is truly my happy place. And this is like baking is like one of my favorite classes I love to teach, and get to know my home cooks that way as well. So that's definitely one of my places. I love that. So I want to talk about who we are and the mission behind our cause. So my name is our actual business, Sophisticated Eat by M. Lachey. My husband is also my co-owner as well. And basically, we're a cooking and nutrition class. We provide educational meal planning, recipe basics for the everyday home cook. So our vision is to bring everybody to the kitchen, one home cook at a time, to bring those memories back, to capture those things that you learned from your grandma, your mom, your dad, your family, and just continue that tradition with your family. So sometimes I think those things get lost with the day-to-day, the hustle and bustle. So our goal is to capture those memories back by creating amazing recipes and amazing memories in the kitchen. So that is our mission. And that's what we do. We've been in business for a year. This month is our 1-year anniversary. And so for me, my profession, I'm a certified foods and nutrition educator at the secondary level. And I've been doing this for 16 years. And so I bring those experiences. I've also had other businesses where we used to have a canning and jelly and jam business. So I've just kind of been taking those experiences and I bring them to my home cooks every month. Our classes are monthly, and you'll get to know some other opportunities that we have coming up for 2023. So definitely welcome, welcome. So if in the chat, if you could put basically the name, your name, and what city and state you hail from, and basically what inspires you to bake for the holidays. If you want to just chat it out, or we can kind of verbally talk about it, or you can definitely put it in the chat, and we'll go from there. I love to know, what's your why. Everybody has a why. I have a why. I know my why is basically I learned how to cook from my mother and my grandmother in the kitchen. My grandmother was a truly from scratch home cook. My dad's mother also was a scratch home cook. So I captured that passion at a young age. So that's why I like to bring to my fellow home cooks is creating those memories with your family and friends is so important. So so you can
I'll,
definitely put that. Yeah, go ahead, Scott. Yeah, share. You can
I'll
definitely share
speak
out.
because there's not a lot of people.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Scott Katz. From Newington, Connecticut.
Oh,
I
welcome.
Thanks. My father was
All right. Yes, go ahead. I apologize.
my father was meats and potatoes. My mother was banned from the kitchen. She's the first to tell you she was a horrible cook.
Oh,
Except for her hazel stuffing and her matzo balls,
oh,
which
that's
loaded.
awesome.
And I learned by when I was well, I loved to bake growing up. My brother and I would make the tall house cookies from scratch without looking. I would make lemon pie from my neighbor's recipe.
Oh,
We,
wow.
we would bake all the time. It just didn't cook. But when I was on my own at first, I would sit in front of cooking shows and take notes, especially Rachel. It's moved.
Awesome. And the second thing you want to do is I always say preheat your oven. Whenever you're baking, you always want to make sure your oven's preheated. Two reasons. Number one, so your oven is hot. And the ingredients, your leavening agents, like your baking powder, we're using buttermilk too today, and it just gives it a nice lift as it's cooking. And so the butter, all that connects together and makes it nice and fluffy whenever it's even. Also, you're going to give it a good even cooking temperature, because once it's been at 350 for 10 minutes, that means that it's going to cook at an even rate whenever you're baking. So you would never want to put and you all know, you know this as well, you never want to put a product in a cold oven, because it's not, and then you start preheating. That's when you have some uneven baking temperatures and uneven textures in your food. You never want to do that. And I know you as a baker, you just want to make sure that's definitely done. And I know you do that already.
Unless it's frozen chicken nuggets.
Yes. Go ahead.
Unless it's frozen chicken nuggets going into a toaster oven.
Right, absolutely.
Then you can start that from cold.
Right. Absolutely. You're right. You got it right. You hit on that. Yeah, like if it's chicken nuggets or air fryer or something that nature, yes. Baking, we want to make sure we take care of our baking, because we want to make sure we taste that deliciousness at the end. So number 3, I always tell my home cooks, just make sure you have your ingredients. You already did that. Your mixing bowls, I had sent off a list of things I like to always send. And I know you have these things at home as a cook, as a baker, measuring spoons and cups. So like I have my stuff I've already utilized some of my equipment because I've pre-measured some things, but just having it out ready to go. I tell home cooks, whenever you're doing, you don't have to do 2 recipes at one time doing mise en place. That's what we usually say in the culinary world, having all things ready together. But you can just do 1 recipe at a time to pace yourself. There's a couple reasons. Number 1, so you can just go step by step. And number 2, so you're more relaxed. You feel confident. I got this. This is going to be a great cake for mom. And, you're in your zone. So that's why gathering your equipment is very important. Let me know if you have any questions that I'm going too fast as well. Number 4, you want to prepare your pans for spraying, flouring, or using parchment paper. Like if you're, it depends on which cake you're baking. So if you're doing like a 9 by 13, it depends, because this recipe is very versatile. You can do a 9 by 13. You can do cupcakes, a standard muffin pan. You can also do a bundt pan. So I'm using a bundt pan today, and I'm sprayed it and I floured it, and I'll talk about that. I have a standard baked Wilton tube bundt pan, and I sprayed it. And what I'm gonna do is also add some flour to it. And what happens, and you know, yes, that's beautiful. I love that. That's like the standard one. That's what everybody had in their kitchen growing up. I love it. That just makes sure that you can bake with a nonstick pan. I like baking with nonstick because it does help even baking, and also keeps the edges smoother when you're baking like a cake. Flouring is very key as well. Okay, so I just sprinkle some flour on, and this helps my cake really pretty much bake where it will not stick. Even though I sprayed it, sometimes when you have high fat or high sugar baking, it tends to stick around a little longer in the pan, because it gets comfortable in a safe space. That's what I always tell my cooks. Okay, so I just do that, and I'm going to change my camera angle here so you can we can go ahead and do this together, and as I walk you through it. So just give me a moment. I'm going to change here around, and if you have any questions at this time, you definitely can chime in as well, as we are going through this journey together today.
I'm here.
All right, excellent. So I'm going to switch here.
Wow, you have an extra arm.
Yeah, definitely. That's assistance here. Thank you. So yes, I just kind of put some flour in. I sprayed it. Now, I will tell you, there also is the Pam makes the flour, the baking spray for baking. I don't know if you have seen that at your stores in Connecticut. Yeah, so that you can use that too. I tell home cooks, yeah, you could definitely do that, but sometimes it's really pricey. So spraying it, you can also butter it and flour it as well, to make sure it's there. Yep. So we are going to prep our pans. That's step 4. The next thing that we're going to do is step number 5. Measure out your ingredients. Dry, wet. I said crack eggs in the bowl. Now it says chopped apples. It should be, I apologize, that's a typo. It should be open up canned puree. So I'll go back and change that. But yeah, so our pan is ready to go. You always want to have your pan ready to go. So whenever your ingredients are ready, they're ready to take off and get into the pan. So that's the best thing to do. The worst thing is to have all that beautiful batter put together and you have no pan ready. So that's another thing. Today I'm using Libby's pumpkin puree. Now the difference, you probably have also seen the pumpkin pie filling. You could use that, but I recommend just using pumpkin puree because the pumpkin pie filling has spices in it already, and we're adding spices. So if you did buy pumpkin, you know, because it's easily to get these two mixed up because of the labeling, you will have to just pull back on some of the spices that we're going to use because it will be overpowering. Yes, and you can find this in any type of grocery brand too. So what we're going to do, we're going to measure out our ingredients.
What I should have used was this.
Yes.
This is cooked mashed pumpkin, actual sweet pumpkin.
Oh yeah. You can use that too. Yep, absolutely.
I should have.
Yes.
Yeah. But I'll save it for the vegan mac and cheese.
Oh, that sounds good. I love that. Yeah, you definitely, and whatever you have at home will work. Yeah, so definitely. So this is the pumpkin puree, and we need 1 15-ounce can. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. So I'm gonna switch gears because I want us to make another thing with number 5 before we move on to number 6. I want to make sure we're doing a checklist. And as a home cook, you know this as well, kind of checking off your list to make sure that you have all of your ingredients. I tell home cooks either they can just put the list somewhere up or just have it together. So I'm going to go down the list with you, Scott, just to make sure we have everything. I have it up here as we move along, and I'll change my angle so you can see a better view of what we're doing. So I'm going to open up this canned puree, and I'm a fan, and you don't have to do this, I'm a fan of colors. So I always kind of separate all of my ingredients in different colors so I don't get them confused. But you can use any type of standard mixing bowl or any type of measuring cup to complete this as well. So I'm just taking a regular scraper, and I'm going to scrape this pumpkin puree out in a bowl. And this smells so good. I mean, it smells almost like a little bit of a mashed, it's kind of a mashed consistency as well. Now, I did do this recipe before, and someone said, could they use a sweet potato? Yes, you could do your sweet potato if you are a sweet potato fan. You can make it a sweet potato pound cake as well. You can just cook mashed sweet potatoes and mash them up.
When do we add the pumpkin puree? Do we add it? Do we add stuff to it, or do we add it to stuff?
Okay, so the pumpkin puree, you're going to put that in a bowl. This is where your buttermilk's going to go. This is part of our wet ingredients today. So your buttermilk and your salt's going to go in this. So
okay.
You just need a probably medium-sized bowl, enough to mix your buttermilk and your pumpkin puree, because that's going to be part of our wet. So, and I'll just kind of fast forward, but I'm going to go ahead and go over it. So with some cake recipes, it calls for a wet ingredient. Okay. Sometimes it's sour cream, sometimes it's milk, sometimes it's buttermilk, and another accompaniment. So the accompaniment today, our main star of the show is pumpkin. So this is going to alternate between that dry ingredients that we have, and we're going to do like an alternating back and forth when we cream the butter and the sugar together.
Okay.
So this does have to be in a separate bowl by itself. Yeah. That's a great question, Scott, because you want to make sure you're, where is it going? Where do we need to put it? And what order it's going to be placed in. Okay. So I'm going to go back to the beginning of the recipe ingredient list and just check off and make sure we have what we need here. Okay. All right. So you should have also, I'm going to go back to the top, 1 cup of butter. And that's really 2 sticks. 2 sticks of butter. And it should be at room temperature.
Yep, it is.
Excellent. And do you know, if you probably know this, room temperature butter, and I also have unsalted, because when you're baking, you definitely do, this as a baker, unsalted's the way to go. But room temperature butter and eggs basically makes a better cake because it helps with the leavening agents do their job, like the baking powder, the baking soda that we're using today. It accompaniments it so well where it basically gives us a nice fluffy texture. You could basically either let it sit on the stove for about 30 minutes or so. You can actually also, another trick, you can put the butter and the eggs in a Ziploc bag and let it sit in warm water. If you forgot to take it out, it's almost like it's floating. Gives a nice little spa bath with some water. And it helps because what happens whenever you cream the butter and the eggs together, you're not shocking both of those dairy components. And even if you're using non-dairy, that still is the way to go too. So I've got that together. The second step is 2.5 cups of flour plus additional for dusting. So yeah, we have that. I have my flour here. Yay! I love your color of your bowl, by the way. So nice. So I just basically what I did, you can sift it 2 ways. What I basically did was I have just took a wire whisk and I just stirred. And I'm gonna stir this on the counter here. So this is my flour. And the reason why, and you don't really have to sift, Scott, because the flour does come pre-sifted in the bag. That's another tip. But because it's been sitting so long and it gets so clumpy, as you notice, you gotta put some air in there. So sifting with a fork or a wire whisk is key. So that's definitely a method that I always tell home cooks in as well. Okay, we checked off our flour. We have our butter. Next, 2 teaspoons of baking powder. I have that measured here. I placed it with the next step, which is 1 teaspoon of baking soda. So I'll wait for you if you have that ready to go. Yes.
I looked ahead and saw that the spices all go together.
Yes.
I don't have a lot of little containers. So I put them in one little container.
Absolutely. Same here. Yep. And because all those
powder, cinnamon, nutmeg, ginger, and cloves, and half a teaspoon of salt.
Absolutely. Yes, Scott. Excellent. You were ahead of the game. I love it. I love when my home cooks do their homework. That's awesome. So yeah, so those are all your baking powder. So your baking powder and baking soda are your leavening agents. And what does that simply mean? It helps the cake rise. And that's why I said the component with adding that butter and egg room temperature is key. You can do one or the other, but both for this recipe, because this is a liquid based cake, cream based cake, you got to have both leaveners because both of them together will do the job and make a cake nice, fluffy, and airy. Let me go back to the flour. The flour, the reason why we use flour in our recipe, it gives the cake structure. Without flour, our cake will not be a cake. You could do gluten-free flour. You could use almond flour. If you have somebody that has a gluten allergy, you can definitely do this as a gluten-free cake. All you're doing is swapping out the ingredients for non-gluten components. So our flour helps keep that cake together. Awesome. So we just talked about the spices. You have your half teaspoon of nutmeg, ginger, you have your cloves, you have your cinnamon. These are known as our warm notes, and it's going to make our spice cake the spice cake. So this is our co-star, as I say, of our show today with our pumpkin is our spices. I love all of these. I use them in other recipes as well. The one thing I will say is that the nutmeg can get a little strong. So definitely, and the clove can get a little strong as well, but having those components together are great. You have your half a teaspoon of salt. So remember, our salt's going to go with our pumpkin puree and our liquid. And the purpose of that is to give it flavor, to also help those notes. Also, it helps tone down the acidity of the buttermilk. So, and it also helps, the salt brings out the flavor of that pumpkin puree in the cake. Next thing you should have, we just talked about that, the pumpkin puree. The buttermilk, we do have 3/4 of a cup. shaken buttermilk. So the reason why, of course, buttermilk separates, and it's that, that acid that comes from the milk whenever it's processed and it's put back the good bacteria acid, and it's thicker. It's great for cookies. I mean, it's great for biscuits. It's great for pancakes because it always has a leavening agent. That acid, that thickness that we see, is going to also give our cake fluffiness and tenderness. Yes, excellent. That looks good,
I
Scott.
use coconut oat milk and I put a tablespoon of apple spice vinegar in this morning.
Ooh, and you know what? You already had the game because you know that because if you don't have buttermilk, you can also use any type of acid, vinegar, or lemon juice as well. Excuse me, as a leavener to help with the break down the acidity and make the thickness happen. So that's great. Hold on one second, grab one thing here. All right, sorry about that. Make sure. Okay. So next thing we have is our vanilla extract, 1 teaspoon. Our vanilla extract is going to give us flavor in our cake today. Gives it that nice sweetness. Yes, I love using pure vanilla extract. I know it's very pricey, but you can also use imitation as well. If you don't have vanilla, you can also use maple syrup.
Oh,
yes, maple.
I get mine from Amazon and it's like $12 for that bottle.
I know, and because we use that at the other recipe that we did. You could use maple syrup. You could use a little bit of honey, but maple syrup is really the way to go because you can actually use maple syrup in other recipes. And I'm always telling home cooks, buy now, use for later. So if you're going to use it for a recipe, that maple syrup, you can use it for pancakes in the morning. Yep.
I should use maple syrup instead of vanilla for this.
You can, or you can use that as well.
Which would you recommend?
I would recommend, well, I would say definitely the maple syrup gives a better flavor.
Okay. I'll use that.
So yeah, and that's gonna also bring out some of that with the oat because you're using oat milk.
Yeah.
It's gonna bring some of that nuttiness out to balance it well.
Okay.
Yeah, so definitely. Our next item we have is granulated sugar. I have mine in my stand mixer already with my butter. the 1 and 1/4 cup. And excuse me, the reason why some people don't, you can use agave, you could use brown sugar, you could use turbinado sugar, you can use raw sugar cane, but any kind of sugar substitute will work. So I have that together with my butter because they're gonna hang out together and be friends for the part of this recipe. And the next thing that we have here are our eggs. Now I've been letting my eggs sit out for a couple of minutes here. For about, awesome. And what I'm going to do, Scott, at this time, I'm going to crack them and put them in a bowl so they'll be ready to go. So if you haven't, you can go ahead and do that at your leisure as well, to make sure that they are ready to go. Okay.
And I like to use brown eggs because the shells don't fall into the.
Absolutely. Eggs. You want to make sure, as much as we love our protein, we don't want it crunchy. Okay. And I also, you're ahead of the game here. We talk about cracking the egg in the bowl. You're making sure you have no other areas or anything that's there as well. So you want to just crack these, and mine have been at room temperature. I also tell home cooks to have like a little I would say trash ingredient bowl. When I was measuring my sugar earlier, you have a little bowl to put your excess ingredients in. So there, you don't have to, it's not hanging out on the counter, and it's not going to be in your way or it gets mixed up with other things. So I always have like a disposal bowl. And also, if you're composting, that's another great method to have your bowl ready on the side for that.
I just clean as I go.
Okay, so next, the cream cheese glaze we will come back to, but you can have those ingredients ready because when we put the cake in the oven, we will go ahead and work on that as well. All right, so we have all of our ingredients. We just checked off everything, and we'll come back to the cream cheese glaze too.
Yeah, I didn't measure out the cream cheese stuff yet because I figured we'd do that after we put the stuff in.
Yes, and you know what, Scott, you can do that if you want to do it. I don't know what time your mom's party. You can actually do it and put it in the fridge.
Yeah.
Yes, so that is a thing as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I just figured I didn't have enough room for all the
right
stuff. I measured out the stuff for this and the chestnut.
Right. Yeah.
So I didn't have room for the cream cheese glaze.
Absolutely. That's fine, definitely, because you want to pace yourself. And again, it's all about what makes you comfortable as well. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. We're going to go ahead and put this recipe together. And move this over. Okay. All righty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch angles. We're going to go ahead. The first step of the recipe is to put your cream, your butter, and sugar together. So I'm going to move my angle here so you can see that as well. All right, so I'm just going to cream my butter. I'm using just a stand mixer, and I probably will mute it because I don't want to kind of put all that sound in your ear.
Too.
So and again, what we're going to do is make sure it's pale and fluffy, and I will show my angles as well. I'll move here. Okay. Hey Scott, how's it going? I'm just checking in. So mine is pretty much, you're looking for the granule sugar components to combine with the butter. So it almost takes on like a pale color. That's what we're looking for. And if you're using like a vegan butter, it still should do that. If you're using vegetable shortening, it will probably do that as well, like a white texture. You can even use vegetable oil. Yes. Oh, that looks beautiful. Yes. Excellent. Awesome. So next, what we're going to do, we're going to beat in our egg one at a time. The reason why is so your cake, your eggs are basically combined together and your cake is fluffier. Sometimes when you add them all in at once, the cake does get a little tougher because we're talking about protein here, our eggs. So our eggs are going to give a nice flavor and also help with that. So I'm going to add one egg at a time and incorporate it. And if an extra one slips in, it's okay. So this cake is very forgiving. So we're going to do one egg at a time, and I'll check in with you in a moment. And sometimes whenever you're compriming this together, it does kind of get on the walls of your bowl. So I just have a little scraper on standby to just make sure those ingredients are incorporated. Okay. Yeah. That looks, oh, that looks great. Yes. That looks amazing, Scott. I'm gonna keep mixing mine for a moment. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we're going to let this hang out, and we're going to go back to our pumpkin puree, which is located right here. Our pumpkin puree, what we're going to do, we're going to add in our buttermilk, and I'm just going to switch this spatula out and to the side. We're going to switch out that, and we're going to add our buttermilk. I know you have oat milk, and was it rice milk? Okay, I'm going to switch that out.
Oat and coconut mix.
Oat and coconut. Oh yeah, that's going to be amazing. Okay, and I'm just going to pour. I'm going to pour this in here. I'm gonna pour this mixture in here. And so, and this is part of our liquid. So I want to get all that out. And I know you had some apple cider vinegar as well as your component. Yes, excellent. So I'm just going to whisk this together. And then I'm going to add my salt in as well. Okay. Then we'll come back and work on our dry here. Okay. So I'm just going to mix this together. It's kind of a light orange feel. I'm going to add in the salt with half a teaspoon of salt that we talked about. Okay. And I'm going to whisk that in there. I'm going to add in my liquid, continue adding in my liquid, my teaspoon vanilla. You can definitely use the maple syrup like we discussed earlier when we were going over the list. So I'm going to add that in there. Okay. And this is going to give us that sweetness for our cake, and also going to lift some sweetness in that pumpkin puree. One thing about pumpkin, because it is a squash, it is a fruit because it has small seeds, but pumpkin is great for baking because you can add different spices and flavors to it. That coconut's going to go well with this as well with the maple syrup. It's going to have a nice flavor component. So I have that mixed together. I'm going to put that to the side. So let's work on our dry ingredients we discussed earlier. We have our flour. Now, if I'm going too fast, let me know. I'm just going to switch gears, and you can just go at your pace, at your leisure as well.
I had trouble getting the maple syrup cap.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, got it.
Thick. Yeah, I understand that. Okay. So as we're continuing, we're going to go ahead and do our dry. So our dry, I have my baking soda and baking powder component. I'm going to add that in there. Okay. The next thing I'm going to add to my component is also my spices. Remember, this is where the spice cake version, the spice cake comes from. I always joke with my students that it's like the Spice Girls, Scary Spice. It adds a little bit of flavor to the group from the Spice Girls. So just adding a little bit of that as well. So I'm gonna and I always tell my home cooks to move as you go. Make sure you put your equipment, measuring techniques away, so it's not, in the way when you're going to your other moving on to each step. So here's my my spices, my leavening agents, my baking soda and baking powder. You can use a sifter. If you have a sifter at home, you can put a sifter over the bowl and put the ingredients in and sift it in. Fork will do, and a wire whisk will do as well. And we're just making sure that all these components are mixed together because we want them even, because we're going to alternate them with the pumpkin mixture. So that should be to the side. So we have two things that's going to go in our mixer. I'm going to bring our mixer, or you can bring your mixing bowl back over as well. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift my mixer bowl, and a good rule of thumb, I like to have some extra help when I'm doing this. So I will go back and find my measuring cups that I used previously, or like a spatula or just a spoon, a nice thick spoon. Okay, so I'm gonna use my spoon for my pumpkin puree. You could definitely use a spatula. I'm gonna use my cup to just use it as a portion scoop. Because I'm going to alternate, I want to make sure I'm keeping as much as my flour, my structure component, and my spices and my leavening agents. You could definitely pick the bowl up and scoop it in as well, but since we're going to be alternating, we'll do that. So what's the purpose of alternating your liquid versus your dry? It keeps the cake batter consistent. Whenever we are done alternating, we want to make sure that there are no lumps, that all of our ingredients are incorporated. And it also keeps, because sometimes when you bake, if you have like that flour at the end of the bowl and then you put it on top, and then when you bake, you have raw flour at the top of your cake. You know, we want to make sure we're preventing that as much as possible by alternating. And that's the whole purpose of alternating when we're using baking techniques. So you're going to end today with flour. So you're always in with flour because that's your structure component. So that's the last thing you're going to alternate with. Okay. So I'll just show you real quickly here. So we talk about alternating. I'm going to add in a little bit of flour to this is my cream, sugar, and my butter component. And then I'm going to add in my pumpkin, my buttermilk puree mixture. Now I'm going slow, but I can definitely pick up the pace here. And I'm just going to add two tablespoonfuls of this as well. And so I'm just going to start mixing. Okay. And I mix on medium low. And so you're just going to keep doing that same technique. And I'm just scraping it down. You start with the flour, then you go with the pumpkin puree. You start with the flour, go with the pumpkin puree, and you end with your flour until all your ingredients are combined in. Okay. And if you have any questions, let me know. I'm gonna mute because I'm gonna be a little loud over here, alternating these ingredients. And if you have any questions, just definitely raise your hand. I'll come off mute and address them. It looks good. I know it smells good over there in Connecticut, so I have no doubt. So definitely have any questions, let me know. Hi, Scott. How's it going? All right, so I'm adding in the rest of my puree, and I'm adding it in my flour as well. This is for the pumpkin spice cake. Okay. And I'm gonna just keep mixing that component together.
Everything's mixed in for me. I'm just washing the stuff, the dishes.
And I'm just going to take off my whisk and lift my bowl and start mixing the rest by hand because I have some dry ingredients that basically blunder up a little bit while I was mixing. How's it going over there, Scott? Just checking in.
I'm done. I'm washing my dishes.
Excellent, excellent. So our cake batter is going to be a pale orange color. It's good rule of thumb to go back to the bottom of the bowl and scrape as much of that flour component as possible. The reason why, again, we don't want raw flour at the top. As you can see, I'm kind of scraping my bowl here, making sure I get all of that flour, the sugar component mixed together. Because this is a deep bowl, and depending on how the width of your bowl and how shallow your bowl is will determine how well you need to go in there. Okay.
No,
So
everything's mixed.
yes. You have any questions? I'm sorry.
Everything's mixed. I used the hand mixer, so I was able to get to the bottom.
Excellent. Yes. So definitely hand mixers, traditional, are the most important tool in the kitchen. Definitely stand mixer, depending on which whisk attachment you use. So we're going to take our prep.
This is what it looks like.
Ooh, that looks amazing.
Thank you.
So we're going to take our prep baking pan.
And this time I didn't accidentally use cardamom instead of cinnamon, which I did when I tried to make a Dutch apple pie by one time.
Oh, really?
I mean, cumin instead of cinnamon.
Oh, yes. Cumin and cinnamon do look alike. So definitely having those different color bowls are key there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start our batter. You can actually pour the batter into a liquid measuring cup or just basically go from your bowl. And this is our pumpkin spice batter here. It smells so good and it looks so good. And we're just scraping most of our texture. We're just going around each area. And just scraping that bowl out there. And we can go back and clean up the middle of our bundt pan if you're using a bundt pan today. So no excess will get crusty or out, okay? So we're just putting that there. If you have any questions, let me know. Okay.
Yeah, I got confused around the beginning. Can we start over again?
Sure. Okay. So you were saying you had you said something about the mixing or adding it in the bowl.
No, I got confused at the beginning. Can we start all over again?
Yes. So what
I'm kidding.
Oh, it's okay.
I meant from the beginning of the recipe.
I was making sure. I was like, wait a minute, the beginning of the recipe? I don't know. So we're gonna I'll take a little paper towel, I'll dab it with some water, and I'm just going to wipe the side of my my baking pan, my fluted pan as I call it. And just to make sure that it's clean, because what happens is you don't want the extra, I mean, it doesn't really, it's not going to affect the cake, but you just want as clean as possible. Okay. And I'm just taking a spatula and I'm just spreading out my actual batter here. Okay. Making sure it's ready to go. Okay. It's already greased. It's already ready to go. Now, this Wilton pan, or that I have, the bundt pan will hold about 3 to 4 cups of batter. In order for you to make sure there's no overflow, you could also measure out your batter in a liquid measuring cup as well. I tell home cooks that they're kind of iffy about, how much batter should go in here. Um, that is something that you can utilize for that. Okay.
Have you ever seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding?
Yes,
It's
I love it.
abundant to can.
I love that movie. That's like one of my favorite. That's a cult classic. I haven't seen the reboot of it yet. I want to see that one. The
Yeah,
part with the daughter. Yeah.
yeah. But now I have to go out and get a flower to put in the middle of it.
Oh yeah, that was so funny. She said a bundt cake. What do you do with it? Yes, I love that movie. That's like one of my favorites. Okay, Scott. So we are going to go ahead and put our wonderful deliciousness in the oven. I have remember our oven was preheated and it was baked. It baked at 350. It should be hot and ready to go. So we're going to place that in there in the center. Again, the center of the oven is the best, so you can actually get even cooking temperature.
One level above the baking stone.
Yes.
It's a pizza stone. Okay.
Oh, pizza stone. Yes. Yeah, same thing. Definitely even baking temperature here. Okay.
Okay.
So
And how long?
Yep.
How long?
I'm sorry. We're gonna bake this for 40 minutes. Now, depending on your pan, if you have a dark pan, I would say 35. So sometimes whenever you cook in a darker pan, it does kind of cook the product faster. So like a dark coated pan. So if you do have a dark coating pan, you want to bake it you can take 10 minutes off of it. And also you can take it down to 325 instead of 350. Now, if you do take it down to 325, you can still bake it at 45 minutes if your pan is like, I would say like a dark, pan. But yours is a standard pan, so definitely 40 minutes is good.
Oh, 40 minutes at 350. Okay.
40 to 40, and then you'll check it then. And then after that, we will see if it needs more time. 45, 40, you need to check the inside. We'll check the center to see if it's set. It's best to kind of under bake it and then go back and continue baking and then over bake it, and then it'll be so hard and not edible.
Can I have a 2-minute break, please?
Yes, I was going to say we're going to break, and I'm going to pause. I'm going to mute and set up for the next recipe, the chocolate, the chess pie. So if you want to take a break for a moment, because it didn't come back on in about 5 minutes or so. Yeah. Okay. I think you were
Don't
muted.
worry about prepping for the cream cheese yet, right?
No, you can
Okay.
do that later. You can do that off
Okay.
camera. You don't have to do that now.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
No problem. Okay, Scott, we're going to move on to our second and last recipe today, which is going to be our chocolate chess pie or chestnut pie, some people may say. This is one of my favorite recipes that I've adapted to. Usually it calls for a baker's chocolate. You can use cocoa powder as well. Full transparency here. I used my last baker's chocolate. I made this pie over Thanksgiving break, and I thought I had some left. So I just had some cocoa powder in the cabinet. You know, us home cooks, we have the arsenal of ingredients available to kind of just throw in. So I have that. So we're going to talk about pre-baking tips. We have already discussed, so I don't want to bore you with that. Now, if you're doing a homemade pie crust, even if you're doing a gluten-free pie crust, we're going to talk about the technique called blind baking versus non-blind baking, and it keeps us from having, and excuse me for saying this, a soggy bottom.
There, I took off my glasses. I'm ready for blind baking.
Yes. So it keeps us from having a soggy bottom. It keeps our crust have a nice layer when we bake it. Because sometimes I will tell you, when you pour things in a pie shell, such as this, the liquid, the wetness from the ingredients can cause that actual pie crust to be very soggy. So what we're going to do, we're going to talk about the blind baking technique and how we can put that together. So what we're going to talk about, number 5, and this is the same thing we went over with the pumpkin, is measuring out your ingredients and how important that is. So for this portion, we're going to measure out this recipe is very simple. So we're going to measure out our ingredients here. Okay.
Okay. I'm here. You just can't.
Okay. Okay. So I have what I went ahead and did, I'm going to go ahead and go to our next slide here. And just let's check off our list, like awesome good cooks that we do all the time. So I have a pre-made pie shell. I do have a recipe that I can send you for a homemade pie shell if you want to, or you have one that you have in your recipe book, you can definitely use this. I say it's the holidays. Why not go buy one? You know, you already are baking for your family, you're cooking for your family. Save yourself an extra step and let Pillsbury or other vendors do it for you. And it tastes just as good to me. So you should have that pie shell ready to go. And what I like to do to my pie shell, and I'm gonna share here, is called docking. And you probably have heard people say poke holes. And docking, what it does, it just basically keeps that pie shell from puffing up when we do the blind baking. And also just lightly dock. And also helps our crust from having a soggy bottom. And it actually helps the filling adhere to the pastry shell as well. Okay, so I just lightly docked it. The second thing, it says a half a cup of butter, and that butter should be slightly melted. So I have the butter ready to go. And a half a cup is basically 1 stick. And if you're using vegan butter, or if you're using shortening as well, you can slightly soften that as well.
Should I soften this should I melt this with the chocolate?
Absolutely, yes. I'm using, so if I was doing this, it would be with the chocolate. If I had my actual baker's chocolate, right? Because I'm using the cocoa powder as a substitute. You can melt that in a pot, or you can melt it in a microwave and just keep stirring. If you do, you can also do it as a double broiler, which you put a pot at the bottom and another pot at the top. It takes extra time, but you can do that as well. That's just an option.
Should I go melt it now?
Yes, you can. Absolutely.
Okay. I know probably know this already, but I learned this from the chocolatier.
Yes.
If you're melting chocolate in the microwave, do it on defrost.
Absolutely, yes, because it will start to stick and it will be a sticky, gluey mess. Something about that radiation and chocolate just don't go together well. So when you are actually tempering it on the stove top, you have more control. Because of the actual cocoa powder, the cocoa seed being enhanced in there, and the technique that they use to make it, that radiation does nothing but seize the chocolate up.
Yeah.
So tempering it, double broiling it or cooking it on low heat, and just keep constantly melting it and stirring it. As soon as it's liquid, then you pour it together in your chocolate custard. You gotta move quickly, and then you know this well as a home cook. You gotta move quickly with that baker's chocolate, or it's not gonna be your friend. It'll be your enemy.
Okay, well, it's in the microwave now.
Okay, great. And you just, as soon as this melts, you can take it out.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I'm using a little bit of double of baking some more of this because ran out of my baker's chocolate, just so happened to have that. But then we have 1 1/2 cup of sugar. And I know we talked about you adding plus a quarter cup due to the chocolate that you have. So you can add that there. So I combined that with my cocoa powder already because I'm using that, but you can just combine that. Just have that set to the side, the sugar. Then we have 3 eggs. All right. So the purpose of our
Question. When the chocolate is done melting, do I pour it into a bowl and then add the sugar?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, correct. You got it. So we have the eggs. Our eggs are this is basically what we're doing right now, Scott, is a custard. We're making a chocolate chess custard. And this is what's going to go inside of our pie shell that's going to bake. So when we're doing like a pie, such as sweet potato pie, coconut pie, the eggs basically hold the product together. So this is basically a chocolate pudding, and any type of pudding base has eggs in it. So that yolk and the albumin is going to help structure, since we're not using flour. It's going to give our pie, our custard structure. And it's also going to give it flavor too.
Do I need to pre-bake the pie shell?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. I apologize.
Do I need to pre-bake the pie shell?
Yes, that's the blind baking.
Okay.
You pre-bake it to about, you can do, I said 20, but 10 to 15 minutes just to keep what the whole thing is. There's 2 ways you can do that. You can place some aluminum foil and a bag of beans, like dry beans or rice, and bake it in there. What happens to blind baking is that the reason why it's called blind baking, because you're covering the actual pie crust with the foil and you're not looking at the pie shell while it's pre-baking. So you're just basically putting it in blindly without seeing what the actual outcome is going to be. Now, it's not going to be bad. It's going to be great because what's going to happen, that weight is going to help that pie shell sink to the bottom. Okay. And it's going to make our crust, it's going to keep our crust from being soggy.
Okay. Yeah. When am I supposed to do that? After the spice cake comes out of the oven?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
So that's, I mean, you know, we may be not off camera, we may be off camera, or I can keep, you know, in a waiting room, whatnot, if you will have any more questions about how that outcome would be. Okay. Yes. Mm-hmm. And it's just to make sure our pie shell sinks to our pie shell basically adheres to the bottom of that pan and keeps the crust from soggy. So, but if you don't mind having a soggy crust, you can skip the blind baking technique and just bake it with the actual custard custard in there.
No, I don't want a soggy crust.
Okay. That's what I was thinking. I was like, you want to make this for mom, so we want to have it nice and tender, our flakes tender. So gotcha. I'm with you on that. No soggy bottoms. Okay. So
I had enough of that when I was a baby.
That's what I'm thinking about too. When you're a baby, I think we all had enough of those. The next thing is you're going to have a cup of evaporated milk. I have some here. Your evaporated milk. And then you're going to have the your vanilla extract.
Adding the sugar to the chocolate.
Add that sugar in and whisk that in there real quickly and let that adhere to those sugar crystals. Yeah. And it's going to be really thick and clumpy. It's okay. Because guess what? We got liquid. We got the evaporated milk. We have the melted butter. It's going to work out fine.
Don't add the eggs yet, right?
Right. Yeah.
You got to temper them.
Absolutely. Now, with that sugar, you could add the cornstarch. You can actually go ahead and add that cornstarch component in there. And so we have the cornstarch. You have, because I kind of skipped that, I apologize. And a little bit of that kosher salt. Now, the reason why we're adding kosher salt is that's what chocolate. And especially if you have baker's chocolate, that salt is going to help bring out that flavor and give it a nice decadent component. The salt actually works very well with chocolate. Most people don't realize that, but some people do. So that saltiness is going to bring out the chocolatiness of this pie, of this custard.
And the cornstarch will help thicken the coconut milk.
Yep. You got it. It's going to help thicken it because this is really going to be, and when you see this, when you bake it, it's going to be a little loose, right? Because we have a higher liquid component with the evaporated milk, and we have the butter. So we have a liquid component. So we do need, and we have, the cocoa powder, the baker's chocolate. So we do need a little bit of firmness, just a little bit, slight. So it's not too runny. Okay.
Add the evaporated milk.
Yes. So after that, so we'll just okay, the egg wash, I will tell you, is for the pie shell before you bake it. It just helps the crust also get firmer, and it helps with the color. It just keeps it from have a nice light brown color. It also helps the pie shell stay crunchy and flaky. That's the whole purpose of an egg wash.
Okay.
And the salt too. The salt is also balancing it out as well. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and switch gears, and we're going to look at the recipe. At this time, so I'm going to, I'm going to pull the recipe up here. I'm going to pull that up 1 minute. I move my full apparatus around. Okay. All right, here we go. Okay, so we have our pie crust. We're gonna go ahead. I know we're waiting on the cakes to come out. So the first thing we're gonna do, it says in a medium bowl combined, we did the melted butter. We melted the chocolate. We're gonna mix the sugar, cornstarch, eggs, and vanilla together, and the milk. So I'm going to put that together. I kind of add mine in already.
Little extra vanilla.
Yep. And add that in there. And combine that melted chocolate as well. Okay, so we're just going to mix all of our ingredients together. And like the cake, I know we did alternating. This one you can just combine until it's smooth. And mine is kind of looking a little right here.
I'm going to temper the eggs.
Yep, temper your eggs, because I would do the same thing if I was doing a hot liquid.
I take a couple teaspoons of the mixture, put it in the egg, stir it in.
Right. Yeah.
More teaspoons.
Right.
Stir it in. Do it a third time.
Absolutely, you got it.
Excellent. I learned that the first time I was making pecan pie and had to throw away a whole lot of scrambled eggs.
Oh yeah, I know. And that's the thing we say in culinary world, don't scramble the eggs. So we talked about that, because that chocolate it gets very hot. So definitely.
Okay.
Yep, after you temper it, then you can start adding more of it in. When you feel like it's cool enough and that the eggs are not like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? Then you are able to go forward and make sure all the other components are combined. Okay.
Oh, it's in. The eggs are in.
Excellent. So we're going to just keep with the custard, combine that chocolate sauce in. So you're going to have a little bit of lumps because of the sugar. So you just keep, you can whisk it in or you can fork it, either one. And the beauty of this is we're using one bowl and we're just mixing it in. So we're just combining that together. And I just like to just pour it up, just make sure that it's all combined.
It shouldn't be that thick, right?
Right, you have that liquid, so it's gonna be a little loose.
Yeah.
Yep, because of the liquid, it's gonna basically break down that chocolate, the sugar, and combine it into a liquid custard. So you should have like a liquid custard consistency. It may be slightly thicker than mine because I'm using cocoa powder. Mine is a little bit more runny than yours because you're using chocolate and maybe a little bit thicker.
Here, let me try yours.
Okay, yeah. There you go. It's the same. So yes, yeah, so that one is that. And also I just go back and just make sure that I get all the lumps of the custard, the baking powder, making sure everything is combined in. I just take my whisk and go around the bowl and just make sure, like if I see any lumps in here, I go back and just go through and do that.
I think mine is smooth.
Yeah, excellent. Beautiful, excellent. So all that goodness is going to, and I'm going to clean my area, just kind of move everything out. I know your cake is still baking. My cake is still baking too. A little bit of vanilla extract. So a couple of things you can do this recipe. You could add two types of chocolate. You could do the 60% cacao, and you could also do like a bitter and sweet, and make it like a double chocolate chess. You could actually do that as well. I've also told home cooks that you could add some hazelnut spread with the 60% with your unsweetened, and that kind of gives it, I know it's kind of like the Nutella, but Nutella actually has been very popular lately with baking. I've used it for making hazelnut cookies, chocolate hazelnut cookies as well. So it is very great. It's a great component in baking. Okay.
Now I collect all sorts of different chips, like mint chips, cherry chips, Bailey, chocolate cream chips, chocolate chips, butterscotch chips. If I coated those in flour so they don't sink to the bottom,
right, there you go.
Melt if I put them in with this custard?
Yes, absolutely. You can fold that in there. Absolutely. Yep.
That's an idea for another time.
Oh yeah.
I try and follow a recipe the first time I make it.
I
do variation.
Look, I understand. I mean, I've had people that put like, well, can I put a little bit of such and such? Like last year, we were doing the maple butter pecan pie last Christmas, and one of my participants said, "Can I just like do a cinnamon stick?" Like I was like, "Go for it." I'm like, if you want to put it in your pecan custard, definitely go for it. You know, she kind of shaved the cinnamon stick, and I was like, okay, try it. You know, if you like it, great. You know, you just can't take it out when you bake it. So one of those things. But yes, if you want to, definitely, this is a good recipe that you can add some different components in there. Okay, so my custard is hanging out, and I'll tell you another thing is it's okay that it is kind of sitting for a while because you do have the cornstarch and everything. You want to let it kind of sit and take its time, combine, just sitting there hanging out together. The pie shell, and I'm going to show you the blind baking trick that I was talking about keeping the crust from being soggy. And
actually, I'm gonna need a little help first because look at the edges of my pie shell.
yeah. So you can do that. I'm going to.
The edges aren't pretty.
Yes. So I have about 10 minutes on my cake, and I'll talk about that. But yeah, oh, that looks beautiful. I have a pie pan just like that, Scott. I love that. Yeah,
But look at the edges. The edges aren't crimped or anything.
I love it. And you know what you could do? There's so many ways you can crimp. Oh, that's beautiful. I like a rustic. It does not have to be like the grocery store. I love a rustic crust. Like you can put fingers in it. You can do fork it with a knife. I mean, a fork. Make it
Now
great.
I poked a lot of holes at the bottom.
Perfect.
Like
And
okay.
by that being glass, you're definitely going to need it because you think about when you bake a casserole and a Pyrex dish. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And I would say 9-inch is the way to go. 9-inch deep with pies because it gives you great space for filling.
Okay.
Okay.
I put tin foil on it.
So you got foil on it here. Okay. Hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 moment.
And I poured the custard into the tin foil. Okay, I poured the custard into the tin foil.
Okay. So
I poured the custard into the tin foil.
no, you didn't pour the custard in, did you?
I'm kidding.
Okay,
Oh, my timer just went off.
Miss, you talking about starting back over? We're going all the way.
My timer just went off.
Okay, so when we talk about blind baking, you're gonna put your. I have rice.
Wait. My timer just went off.
Okay, go ahead and take your cake out.
Okay. Let me get a chopstick.
Yes.
And where do I test it? Anywhere?
You can just the cake. Oh, I'm sorry, you're speaking about the cake. I apologize.
Yeah.
So you can test it in the center, and it like near the flute, like the flute component area around that tube. Yeah.
Oh no, it's not.
Okay, put it back in, and I'll tell you probably. Yeah, put it back in for about 10 more minutes. Yep. And it should be set. And because we're using using that kind of technique, you don't have a lot of batter, you just have a little bit. So it's there. I can tell that some of that cake is set and some of it isn't. We just have 2 different types of cake sets right now. It's okay. That's normal when you're baking a bundt cake because it's kind of when it goes around that you're baking around that tube, sometimes it can be tricky.
Okay. How much rice do I put in?
For 10 minutes. I would say about 5 more minutes and check it. Let's do 5, be safe.
5 minutes? Okay. Yes. How much rice do I put into this?
I just put 1.5 cups. I took like half of what I had in my bag and just put it in there.
Now, will I ever be able to cook this rice?
I would say no. Now, if you want to reconstitute it and put it in water and then do a stir, like boil it and then do a stir fry, you could do that. But no, if you're not, I wouldn't use it again. But if you wanted to, you could. It's going to be a little toasty, which is not bad.
Why don't I make this 2 cups and start a separate container of rice for pie tins?
Right.
And reuse it.
Yeah, you could definitely do that. And I said if you don't, and I told home cooks, even if you don't have rice, you could do rice and beans are a little heavy when they're all together, and it's going to help that crust sit at the bottom. It's going to make sure that it adheres at the bottom. So this blind baking technique that we're using, as you can see, our pie crust is there, and we're taking some rice, some beans, what we have at home, and we're just pressing it down and making sure that the crust is staying to the bottom. This will prevent your crust from being a soggy bottom. We don't want a soggy bottom crust. We want a nice, flaky, tender crust whenever we're cutting into our pies.
Wait, got it.
So we definitely want to do that. Okay, so we're gonna wait for your cake to come out, and then we'll see how that's operating here.
And my dishes are done.
Oh, what's that? I'm sorry.
And my dishes are done.
Awesome. Yeah, so you can, that's the beauty about baking, cleaning as you go, cooking, cleaning as you go, to prevent any dishes at the end will help make sure that you have a safe and clean cooking environment whenever you're cooking in the kitchen. So that's why cleaning as you go is key. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-bake this for about 15 minutes. It says 20 minutes because again, we're going to bake it again with the chocolate custard. I have my chocolate custard here that I put together for my chocolate chess recipe. So we're just going to let that sit out and just let it hang out and marry. Once I know we're baking cakes as well. Once we have our pumpkin spice cake out of the oven, we'll be good to go with that as well.
Okay. Great.
So we are ready to rock and roll with this awesome holiday baking basic cooking class here. Okay. So my cake has about 4 minutes remaining. I'm going to let that finish, and then I'll put my pie crust in after I test it to check it to make sure that the actual cake is actually set. Okay. And again, we'll test that and make sure it's ready to go. Okay. So while we have some downtime here, this is what I will tell you the differences between baking different pie shells and different pie crusts. So if you're doing a fruit pie, like apple pie or a cherry pie with a double crust, I always say a double crust on top, you would not need to do blind baking because that pie is going to bake for a long period of time. And with the actual weight of the apples and the cherries, the filling, it's not going to have a soggy crust. When we run into soggy crust is when we're doing a pie shell for like key lime pie or a lemon meringue pie or a chocolate chess pie. So that's when we run into a soggy crust, and that's why we have to use that technique. But with your double layer, your double crusted fruit pies, you would not need to do this.
Or any cream pie, really.
Right, actually, yeah, that's correct. And so we could also at this time, while we're waiting, we could actually do the egg wash, and we could wash the inside of our pie shell. And okay. Yep, and what with that egg wash is going to also help our pie shell, even though it kind of is touching the foil, but it's going to make sure that our pie crust has a nice flaky texture. It also is going to keep the color as well, where it won't overbake. It's something about that protein molecule of the egg wash. It keeps a nice colored crust. So we're going to do that and put that together. So I'll show you how to do that.
Wait, let me check my cake real fast.
Okay.
Oh yeah, it's coming out clean.
Yeah.
In one spot, but not another.
And clean for the win.
Clean in one spot, but not another.
Okay, so it's one spot not set.
Yeah.
Okay.
Reach out the
You
third
can put
spot.
It back in for a few
Third
more
spot is almost set.
Okay.
So 5 more minutes?
Yep, you got it. 5 is really key here. And so what we're going to do while we're waiting, I have put together my egg wash, which is going to go on my pie shell. Since we're blind baking, this is going to keep my pie, the color, the beautiful color of this pie shell.
How many eggs do I need for the egg wash?
1 egg and a little bit of water. And this is going to keep the color and also keep the nice flaky texture. Again, no soggy bottoms on our crust today. We're not letting that happen. We are beautiful bakers and we're gonna make a beautiful pie. Okay, so this technique is very essential when you're doing any type of pastry. Even if you're doing homemade croissants, you can definitely do this as well. Take a little bit of egg and a little bit of water as well. Okay, that's my cake coming out. Let's check and see what I got going on here. Okay. And I'm just going to take, and you can use a knife. I use a basically to test my cake. And I will take it out just to double check.
I use a chopstick.
Yes, you can use anything you have that's actual point, has a nice little pointy texture end to get down into your cake as much as possible. Okay. So hold on one moment here. So our cake is out. I'm going to move my pie crust to the side. I'm going to put my blind baking equipment in there. I'm going to grab my rack. And this is my cake, the pumpkin spice cake that we just baked together as a class. Nice. And I'm going to use my cake tester, also known AKA my actual, I actually use a skewer stick because this cake is very tall. So I want to use that to insert in this. I want to get to the center or the deep end, the deep inside around the tube. Okay. And pretty much it comes out clean. Now, if it had some batter on it, like I know you had some batter on yours, I would definitely put it back in and let it continue cooking. But since it came out clean, this tells me my cake is tender. Another way that you can tell that your cake is already cooked by looking at the edges, Scott. The edges, when the edges pull from the actual cake pan, and I can actually put my cake tester in between my pan and my cake, that also tells me that my cake is done as well. So when it pulls away from the actual pan itself, it actually tells me that my cake is set. Sometimes if you don't have a cake tester, this is just kind of a little rule of thumb that my grandma taught me. You just basically to see if it pulls away from the edges, that is set. Okay.
Oh, I didn't use the salt when I did the egg wash.
Okay, excellent. So I'm going to move my cake over and let it keep cooling.
No,
and that cake is going to take about 15 to 20 minutes for it to set as well.
I did not use the salt when I did the egg wash.
That's okay. It's fine. We already have salt in the actual as well. If you wanted to and you really had the option to do that, you could sprinkle a little bit of salt and put it on here, but you don't really have to. Okay.
When do I put the rice back onto the pie shell?
So you
I can do that now?
Yeah, you just pour the actual pie shell. You actually take it and pour it into the foil, and you just place it in there to make sure the bottom actually sets. Okay, so that's the whole purpose of it.
Yeah, no, I mean I can put it back in even though it's still wet.
Right, correct. Yeah. So if it's still wet, that's fine. It's going to be wet because again, we want to keep that the bottom. This is going to help keep our bottom from getting soggy. So this is what we would like to have. Yeah.
And the timer just went off.
Yay! Let's see how that cake turned out on our holiday baking cooking class. It smells like the holidays over here. I know it smells like the holidays over there at your home as well. We're going to check. I would love to see how that wonderful cake turned out.
It's done.
Yay! Excellent. Success, success, success. Amazing.
Thank you so much.
You are so welcome, Scott, anytime. So I'm going to, since my cake came out, I'm going to place my pie in for blind baking.
I'll do that too.
Set my timer for about 10 minutes. I would say 15, because my cake has been in there for 45 minutes. And I'm just going to continue stirring my custard.
How long does a pie go in for? 10 minutes?
Yeah, 10 minutes. 10, yeah, because your pie, you don't want to overcook. You just want to get it to the point where that crust is sitting to the bottom and adhering to the bottom when it's this is called pre-baking or blind baking. Also, you can do 20 minutes as well if you want a little longer, if you want a really firmer texture for the crust as well. I'm so glad your cake is done. I know it looks amazing.
Yay. Down a second, see, 1 cup powdered sugar, 4 ounces cream cheese, 3 tablespoons milk, and 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract.
Yeah.
Mix them all together with an electric. Oh, that sounds easy.
Yeah, I'm going to show you real quickly here how to put that together, because I do have a few of my components out at this time.
Okay. Yeah, but I know you don't drizzle icing over something hot because it just.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you could drizzle. You could actually, Scott, make this truly ahead of time. Like, you could definitely make this a day in advance.
Oh, well, why don't I do that with you?
Yeah, sure. Come on. Definitely. Come on and let's rock this last part out. We're almost done here.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Here's my powdered sugar.
Yes, powdered sugar. Yep. And that's, you know, some people call it also confectioner sugar.
Yep.
Because it's used in pastry and confectioning, like techniques like candies and pastries.
There's another name
also
for it too.
Yeah, as confectioner sugar. Some people call it that too.
Yeah, no, it's another name, like, no, it's brown sugar that has another name.
Okay. Yep, confectioner sugar. Some people refer to that term as well. So I'm just adding my 1 cup. And I'm gonna go ahead. Now, also your milk for this recipe could also be room temperature as well.
Okay, half of this thing of dairy-free cream cheese, vegan.
So you have vegan cream cheese, which is fine. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. That'll work too.
I may not be lactose intolerant anymore for all I know. It all had to do with a medicine I was put on that made me lactose intolerant. But I'm off that.
Always want to play it safe, especially if there's, you know, lactose, that sugar, you know. You just want to play it safe with any time you're baking or cooking anything of that nature.
Yeah.
Now you could use a mixer. I'm just using a good old whisk to get in here, and I'm gonna add some of this milk in. So I'm just creaming my cream cheese together with my powdered sugar. So it's gonna be like a little paste. I got a bunch of it clumped on. That's okay. And it also helps, Scott, that your vegan cream cheese is at room temperature.
Oh.
And if you don't have it at room temperature, you can definitely place it in the microwave to soften.
I've already poured it into the bowl with the brown sugar. Okay.
That's fine.
And
if this doesn't make enough, you can definitely double the recipe if you want to add more to the cake, if you want to add a little bit more to it. And I'm going to,
oh, the whisk is in there. Okay.
okay. So I'm going to add in my milk. It says 4 tablespoons. And combine the remaining of the ingredients together. Okay. I'm going to shake my milk up a little bit here.
Oh. Should it be liquidy, drizzly when we're
Yes,
done?
absolutely.
Okay, so I have the milk. I left the milk out because I know when you're using powdered sugar, you always have to add extra milk.
Yes, absolutely. And I have mine a little bit, but I may have to add a little bit powdered sugar. I'm gonna continue to combine mine. Now, another technique I tell home cooks, if you want to make it nice, fancy, pretty, the drizzle, you can pour it. Don't worry about buying a $15, $20 piping bag. Use a Ziploc bag and cut it. I'm going to show you that real quick. You can do that or just use a spoon.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do, spoon.
Yeah, just use a spoon. And so my mixture has combined. And yeah, and it's a great consistency. And I have a cake that I have already done because my cake over here is going to take about 20 minutes for it to cool before I inadvertently move it.
And then another couple hours to cool enough to drizzle.
Right, yes. So I have a cake that I did this morning, Scott, that I'm going to show you because this one has been out for about 2 hours, 2.5, almost 3 hours.
Okay. How does this look?
Oh, that looks perfect. And that's vegan cream cheese?
Yep.
Oh my goodness, that looks amazing. That vegan cream cheese looks amazing.
Nice.
Okay, so okay, so yes. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually I'm going to drizzle. This is my pumpkin spice cake. I'm going to grab my spoon. And I've had my cream cheese mixture. And I'm just going to drizzle. And this is after your cake is cool for a couple hours. Mine is right now is really cold.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to just drizzle this. I'm just going to turn my little cake I can alternate every other. You can make it fancy as you want. And I'm making a mess, but I'll come back and clean it up. It's not a mess. It's not success if it's not a mess. That's what I always tell my participants. And I'm just going to alternate in between. You can do it really fancy like that as well. And it's going to run into, that's going to make it a nice little rustic feel as well when you see it running and just dripping inside.
Ooh, the pie.
And your pie crust should be about ready. Yep. And again, I can go back and add a little bit more, but this is just to kind of see, give you a feel about how it's going to look drizzling it.
Looks nice.
Yes. And you could just go over some areas that you miss and kind of pour it on there. It doesn't have to be perfect. Right now, you know, some people, you know, this is a bundt cake. So bundt cake, you can really be creative with it. You could also put some cinnamon, sprinkle a little bit of, mix some powdered sugar and cinnamon together so people know that cinnamon is spice. It has a spice in here that signifies that it is a spice cake by adding that cinnamon component outside. That's just to give it a nice little decoration. Okay. And this is 4 ounces of cream cheese, 1 cup of powdered sugar. And I use, Scott, I just use 3 tablespoons of milk. You can also use evaporated milk, like you had some of that canned evaporated milk left. You can definitely use that as well.
Yeah, I used the coconut oat milk.
The coconut milk, yep. You can use almond milk as well to create that drizzle effect as well. So I'm going to clean the outside, but that's how our finished product is going to be today.
Great.
So, and this, it says holidays, it says Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, everything. It just says all the things you want it to say for your family. So
yes,
definitely. Okay. And you also can refrigerate this as well. You can go ahead and refrigerate that as well. And then I'm gonna go around and just clean it up a little bit, so to make it more presentable. You could also use, and I completely skipped a step. You can use parchment paper under the cake, and then that extra drizzle can just basically be on the parchment paper. You pull the cake up and just take the parchment paper out. That's what I usually do.
okay.
So I kind of went, I forego, and I think I got excited because the cream cheese icing smelled so good. So I kind of forego that, but you can actually put parchment paper under there and it kind of gives it a nice, clean, uniform look as well.
Okay.
Yep. So our cake is ready. Once you get a chance, you can do your cake as well. Our pie crust should be ready to go at this time. So
I've removed the rice from mine.
Okay, yes, you remove your rice.
Should I pour in the custard?
Yes, you can. I'm going to do that with you as well. We're going to pour in the custard. I'm going to take mine out, Scott. My crust just became ready, so I'm going to pull mine out as well. And it smells so good. I know yours smells good too.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right, and you can pour your custard on there, and I'm gonna pour mine over here. So it's my, and then I'll bring it over so you can see it. That's my oven talking. Okay, so I'm going to show you what my custard, chocolate chess custard looks like as well.
Okay.
And I am going to put mine right here. Just slide it over. And it's going to be loose. That's fine that it is. And you can just fill it up just about to the top. It's going to set. You can bake this under a baking pan, like a cookie sheet. So if any does spill over, it bakes in your pan and not in your oven. So this is our chocolate chess with our blind baking. And then you may not be able to see my, but it is basically the egg wash. You probably do see a little bit of the coating of that on your pie shell to give it a little bit of a firmness and give it a little bit of a nice flaky texture. Okay. And I'm going to do a little bit just so it won't go in there, but I'm going to do a little bit of it. If I see some parts that didn't get some of that egg wash on there is good, I can go back and tap it with a brush, just a little bit at the edges to make sure my crust is going to come out with a nice golden brown texture. So you can save your egg wash in the future and just take a brush and just tap it.
Okay.
Okay, so that is what we have here. And I'm going to use a cookie sheet, Scott.
Already got mine.
Yeah, I like to do that just as a rule of thumb, just in case. And my pie crust is good. And that way, any of the custard, if it bakes on the pan. It probably will not run out because we're using a 9-inch pie crust.
Mm-hmm.
That the likelihood of that spilling over is very low. But when you're doing an 8-inch, a standard pie crust shell or pie shell, excuse me, then you definitely want to always bake up with a pan under it. So you don't want to clean your oven. You know, you want to enjoy your delicious goodies. You know, you don't want to have to spend all afternoon scraping your oven because of chocolate explosion.
Yeah.
So another thing, and this is just really personal preference. Some people do put a little bit of sea salt at the top, a little bit of like flakes of sea salt or kosher salt, just to give like a chocolatey, salty, sweetie texture. You don't have to do that, but some people do. We're ready. We're going to bake this.
Okay.
And we're going to bake it in the center of our oven. I'm going to grab my oven mitts. Okay. And we're going to bake that for, it says 8 to 10 minutes. I would say really 20. About 20 minutes. Just the rule of thumb until it sets. Now, if you find that it's not set, just go about 10 more minutes and then it should be set. The custard, anytime that you bake with the custard, you may have that where it will not set. It still will be a little bit of movement in the top, a little bit of wiggliness as well. Okay. So after it's done.
How do I tell when it's done?
Yes, this is from this morning. So I baked one this morning so I could just show you guys. This is after a blind bake and this is after the egg wash. So the egg wash has basically, you see how our crust looks? It looks perfect. That's what a good egg wash will do for you. It makes sure that your crust is not over baked. The egg yolk keeps the color of the crust and it keeps the texture of the crust as well. Now, you probably noticed that I do have some cracking, right? That is normal for any custard, especially a chocolate chess pie. To me, that's the beauty of the pie because it's homemade and the texture, you see a little bit of the crack texture, that's fine. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to wash my hands. I touched some of the egg wash. And I'm going to show you how you can make it, like dress it up a little bit.
I mean, how do you know when it's done?
When it's, you can tell when it's done when the center stops moving. Like if you tap it and the center stops moving, then it's done, it's set.
Okay.
You can also check it with a knife or a skewer as well.
Okay.
The thing about this, the chocolate chess, it does have to cool for 2 hours for it to set.
Okay.
So this pie, my actual pie was a little bit of wiggly when I took it out. But as you can see, it fell down because it was higher, which is normal because of the eggs. And it basically fell a little bit and settled. That when you see these valleys in here, or the lowness of the valleys, I say, you know that it's set. If it's still high and it's really, if I move it like this and it still moves, you see my batter has not moved at all. Mm-hmm. That tells me that my actual custard is set.
So okay. After 2 hours, if it's wiggling, do I put it back in the oven?
Yes, you can put it back and let it slow for 325 for about 10 to 15 minutes. Just let it keep cooking. Okay. Now, I would say definitely for this pie, 30 minutes in the oven. That should definitely, after you take it out, 2 hours, because that's what I did for mine. I'm going to change that recipe and resend it out because I thought I made that change. But 30 minutes of baking will do. Okay. Because remember, we pre-baked the pie shell already, and we don't want to over-bake our pie shell, but 350 will do. 350 for 30 minutes will do. So technically, the whole cooking time takes 40 minutes, and I'm going to make that change because I thought I made that change originally when I sent it out, and I did not. So I do apologize about that. Now, what I'm going to do, I have some good old Cool Whip that I'm going to kind of mix together. And this is truly optional, Scott. You do not have to do this. I gotta actually make that thaw a little bit. So I would just put some Cool Whip, drizzle some dust of, you can combine some powdered sugar and cocoa powder together. Even if you have homemade, I usually do homemade whipped cream or any type of vegan cream that you have. You don't want to use any type of creamy dairy component. That is an option. So what you can do is just dress that up. My whipped cream is still a little frozen, but I would put that on there and just like you dust some of powdered sugar and on there as well. And that's our chocolate chess pie.
Thank you.
Yes, definitely, definitely.